Hi, my name is Eric. In this video of the Future Israel series, we continue with a reconstruction of the land of Emmanuel after the Second Advent. Then we follow with landmarks for Virgin Israel and complete the three scenes from chapter 2 with a Manipur foreman. May this vision of the future Israel, based on so many dormant biblical prophecies, bless you. Millennial landmarks in Messiah's land. As we traveled further southward in Royal Israel, we saw a lot of construction activity whenever we drove past villages. Tall cranes stood like sentries among giant slabs of grey concrete, reminding me of giraffes browsing among trees on a farm where we once lived during a difficult time. I had to get to the main road for my lift to work, but when it rained, I jogged, slipping and sliding through the mud with bare feet to keep my shoes dry. Coming from town, we were not familiar with the challenges nature posed to millions of impoverished people living in Africa's vast rural areas. So, what I remember as a challenging experience would have been just another day in the life of the poor. Those spoiled with the easy life of modern society could not comprehend hardship and were emotionally totally unprepared for what came with the tribulation. Survival was much less traumatic for humble believers in the lower income brackets, accustomed to a simple rural life, for the meek has indeed inherited earth. Look how smart those apartments are spaced among the older renovated buildings, my wife remarked as we drove past another village, integrating the community with the farming activities all around it. The long-term planning for the millennium is such a massive challenge because the population of Israel is going to increase fourfold, as Zechariah 10:10 foretold. Jeshurun shall return until no more room is found for them. These city planners, architects and engineers are really like Bezalel and Aholiab in the days of Moses, I remarked, referring to people with a supernatural abundance of wisdom and talent. Yeah, Dave nodded. There's a huge shortage of housing everywhere, but the poor are much better off now than what they were before the quake. We nodded in agreement. Like others who qualified to migrate to Israel, we too have elected not to make Aliyah immediately. Why rush? We have 1,000 years, we joked. But the actual reason for waiting was not to increase the congestion and the demand for housing in Israel, and because of the huge global demand for teachers and preachers that Zechariah 8 foresaw. We sporadically got delayed when herds of cattle, goats, and sheep crossed the road on their way to pastures. I suppose you know these farms are like the kibbutzim, Dave asked. I nodded. Moshav-type cooperatively owned farms and businesses of every kind and nature have sprung up everywhere to provide generational job security for families. It's like the role the Histadrut Union played in building up Israel. After the War of Independence in 1948, I contributed. South Korea followed a similar recipe after the Korean War in 1953 with its chaebols that became the likes of Samsung, LG, and Hyundai. Yeah, it's similar to Germany's Wirtschaftswunder with American aid after World War II, Dave added. Except that we now have none of the deceit and greed of the past, of the rich making fortunes both in times of peace and war. I agree. There's now a similar national urgency among all nations, being commanded by the most righteous, honest, and inspired call of leaders ever in history. People unified in serving our King. The power of unity has been proved again. The scars and the memories of the past tribulation will quickly heal and disappear. We, as the privileged remnant, are motivated to do everything to the glory and honor of our King, unified in spirit as a royal holy nation. It's a union the world has never seen before, a union of people who were dispersed across the world for centuries, are now so singular in thought and action. The restoration of the nations is a far greater miracle than any previous Wirtschaftswunder. Unlike with the rebuilding of Medinat Yisrael after 1948, construction in Israel is nowadays not hindered by archaeologists, politicians, or a spiteful enemy. The royal decree now strictly controls archaeology, for history has taught that mankind's curiosity for the unknown will always lead to the idolization and worship of simple things made by men. Traveling further, we saw few signs of the earthworks that took place in cleaning up the land after the war. Old rubbish dumps and sewage plants have either been buried or carted away. New waste treatment plants with huge pipelines buried deep underground take effluents across the border with the goal of keeping the land pure. This is done because the presence of the Holy One again dwells among the tribes of Israel, like the camp in the days of Moses, and the land must be kept pure as the word instructs. Do not defile the land which you inhabit, in the midst of which I dwell, for I, Jehovah, dwell among the children of Israel. Finally, we arrived in bustling and fast expanding Beersheba, which is now the capital of Zebulon, and has 7 lambs as an emblem. The name refers to the well of 7, or the well of oath, recalling the covenant Abraham as the first prince of God, made here, sacrificing 7 lambs. What kind of trees are those? My wife asked as we traveled down the main street of Beersheba. Tamarisk, replied Dave. It's to remind us of the time Abraham planted tamarisk here. Look at those children riding camels, I said, and pointed at children not on horses but camels. Surprised, we noted an enormous billboard advertising the Isaiah 60 riding school. Okay, another prophecy fulfilled, laughed Dave. Right, number 5, landmarks for Virgin Israel. Soon after leaving Beersheba, we crossed the border into Zebulon, where we saw a gigantic rectangular rock next to a huge signpost, showing the direction and distances to Jerusalem and the main villages of the 12 tribes. They took setting up a remembrance stone to another level, said Dave, and we smiled. Yes, it looks like a junior lighthouse, I laughed. I suppose it's Zebulon's Devarim 27 stone, my wife remarked, meaning a Deuteronomy 27 stone. Yeah, these landmarks are also called Torah Afinim, explained Dave, but this one takes first prize. He was talking about the stones Joshua had the tribe set up after entering the promised land. They had to be plastered white and with a summary of the 10 words of Exodus 20 written on them. Beneath the signpost was a plaque with the famous instruction of Jeremiah 31:21. Set up signposts, make landmarks, set your hearts towards the highway. Turn back, O Virgin Israel, turn back to these cities. Let's stretch our legs a bit, I suggested, noting a public amenity next to the parking area. We stopped and I asked Dave to take a photograph of us in front of Zebulon's stone of remembrance. Setting up these stones was the very first thing the redeemed nation had to do on returning to the Holy Land, with Torah being the constitution of Israel. This one also has Isaiah 9's prophecy regarding Zebulon inscribed on it. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and upon those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. We soon continued our trip and our excitement grew as we traveled further through Zebulon. We passed Eliab ben Chelon and then reached Ornagah, which is Hebrew for a light shine. This village had a distinct Dutch character, being home to surviving Dutch and Flemish believers. as well as some from Indonesia and Suriname. It came as a surprise for other nations to see the comparatively large number of Afrikaners in Zebulon in particular, but being the furthest south of the rivers of Cush, we have always shown strong spiritual identification with Israel. Those were, of course, in the days when Jerusalem was still trampled by Gentiles. But at last, the words of the prophets have been fulfilled, miraculously and literally as only the Holy One can. As the trip continued south, the realization set in that we were about to finish the galut, the dispersion that has lasted 2,700 years for our clan. It felt surreal to approach the place that would be home for our family and descendants for the rest of the millennium, waiting on the resurrection. It made me think of the many places we have stayed during the years of our personal galut, fully appreciating how the Almighty let all things work together for good to them that love Him. Yes, even our mistakes. As pilgrims, we knew how to abound in much and in little, not seeking our own interest, and it was only recently that we began to dream about retiring in the Holy Land. Getting close to our final destination, we crossed a brook flowing to the brim, as Joel 3:18 said it would one day be. Gad's council has named the brook Bat Yiptach, meaning daughter, in memory of the virgin daughter of ancient Gad's famous leader. Another huge Devarim 27 stone proclaimed the border of Gad, and inscribed on it is the famous prophecy of the patriarch Jacob concerning Gad. But he shall triumph at last. Genesis 49. Then, turning towards Tamar, we drove past Ezer, named after the leader of King David's famous Gadite captains. Gad's capital is Mahanaim, King David's city of refuge during Absalom's rebellion, while the rest of the tribe's villages are strung like a pearl necklace with interspaced suburbs, all named after Gad's sons, keeping family names in Israel alive in obedience to Torah. Excited, we pronounced the names as we went past: Zephon, Haggi, Shuni, Ozni, Eri, Arod, Areli. Then came the penultimate village before our destination, Yazer, one of the three Merari Levite towns where King David found men of valor. These names felt very familiar, having studied it over and over, following every bit of news regarding developments in the land of Emmanuel, and in particular those in Gad. Finally, we came over a rise, and there, basking in the morning sun, was our village. We pulled up next to a beige, 24-story tall apartment building with the name Rehoboth written in large terracotta vertical letters. "Here we are," said Dave. We got out and just stared in silence. It was one of those very special moments in one's life that one would for always treasure. We then held hands and I said a prayer. Torah Afinu, thank you for having blessed us to return. Thank you for the wonderful provision, I whispered with a croak in my voice. It felt so strange, setting our feet on the soil that is due to become home to us, our children, grandchildren, and one day our great-great-grandchildren. How many generations are there in 1,000 years? We stepped carefully around the scaffolding to the front door and into the building where artisans and builders worked tirelessly. It was like an anthill, a busy, happy anthill. Most of the workers commute from across the border and regard it as a privilege to labor in Millennial Israel, working with joyful banter and purpose, without worries, strife or malice, and no curse is ever heard. The Manipur foreman. "Shalom, Yehovah Imachem," said a huge olive-skinned man with a huge black moustache and beard. He looked immensely powerful with a barrel chest, wide shoulders, and huge hands. "Jehovah be with you," he repeated himself. perhaps suspecting that we are not yet familiar with the ancient greeting of Israel. Yevarecha Yehovah, may Jehovah bless you too, I replied, smiling. It's so nice to hear how the name of the Almighty is again used after all the false names and man-made traditions have disappeared in one astonishing day, a day called the Second Advent. Are you the new owners? Asked the foreman, wearing brown overalls, a heavy navy blue artisan pinafore, and a broad brown belt with his tool pouch on his side. He was obviously as strong as an ox. His Indian English accent immediately gave him away. From whereabouts in India are you? I asked. Manipur, he answered proudly. My parents were from Mizoram and my wife's family Bene Israel in Tana, near Mumbai. But where are you Gadites from? Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, I replied. The Gadites, Reubenites, and Manasseh share an ancient friendship dating back to the time Moses gave us the land he conquered east of the Jordan. Sadly, we were the first of Israel's tribes that went into captivity in 732 BC, followed by the rest when Samaria fell 10 years later. I think you're going to like this, he said with his peculiar accent, leading us up to the front door into the living area. Our apartment could almost have been called a penthouse in the materialistic days of the past, had the roof not been reserved for communal use. Having lived moderately all our lives, we have no interest in penthouses, but as the patriarch of my family, will have the privilege to live at the top, and we were eager to see the view. How big is your family? We have 4 married sons, but they don't have many children, my wife answered. Not many yet, I corrected her with a laugh. So how many floors do you plan to occupy? The foreman asked. 4, 2 to rent out at first, my wife answered. He nodded, knowing that we are thinking of the next generation and the future. Hopefully the kids will pay it off before the year of Jubilee, I joked, but it was true. This would be home to our clan until the end, when we traded for the heavenly. The foreman opened the double sliding doors leading onto a huge, partially covered balcony. In each corner was a mega-sized flower box, each for a fig tree and a grapevine to fulfill Micah 4:4. For every man in Messiah's Israel shall sit under his own fig tree and his own vine. The balcony offered us a lovely view. We noticed a cloud bank towards Eilat, 200 kilometers to the south, where the Gulf of Aqaba borders with what is now called the Peninsula Moshe, Musa in Arabic, and not the Sinai. I guess we'll occupy this until the Ancient of Days sends the new Jerusalem from heaven, I said, laughing. We were witnessing firsthand how the land of Emmanuel is being developed like a huge landscaping project to house the 12 tribes and their offspring for the duration of the millennium. An offspring that will be huge, mainly because of longevity, with the absence of accidents, war, famine, diseases, and evil globalist elites who wanted to reduce the world's population to save planet Earth. Coupled with amazing scientific advances, the restorative healing power from the word, the removal of harmful drugs, and new health products from the trees on the banks of the river of life. This is not the paradise on earth as was expected by Jehovah's Witnesses and others, but with the absence of harmful substances and the suppression of evil, man's longevity will almost be that of the patriarchs again. We're already seeing an improvement in our own health too. For it's as Isaiah 65 said, a man reaching 100 would be seen as a sinner. The blessing of children is another reason the development and planning of new Israel has to be made with a view of a population explosion. Several friends saw their families double from 2 to 4 children within a year or two after they had become Messianic. It was the same blessing on the ancient Hebrews in Goshen that threatened the ancient Egyptians. The apartments and villages are therefore planned to house future generations with extended families living together during the millennium. Under the Zechariah formula, the number of those being gathered from the nations will equate about 10 to 1 with the saints from Judah. With about 1 million Jewish survivors having qualified to remain in the land, the population of Royal Israel is expected to grow from the present 12 million to 40 or 50 million before the Jubilee year. But now our attention was taken up by the inspection. Both bedrooms opened onto a large balcony, but what my wife liked was the walk-in closets. Both bathrooms had big showers, but only one had a bath, which is meant more for children and not to be indulged in by filling it to the brim. This posed no problem for either of us, for we grew up respecting the scarcity of water. There are filter systems, waste shredders, and new micro-incinerator bins, with explicit instruction regarding local wastage treatment. Immigrants are educated regarding new septic tank systems to ensure that the Holy Land will never get spoiled by sewage and rubbish. Other nice features included a soundproof study cum prayer room and an open-plan kitchen with an island. The hero of the living room is a huge paper-thin TV screen. The quality of the tiles, woodwork and fittings are of the highest standard, and it's made to last a long time. Although the climate has undergone changes, Israel still has a short winter with snow in the north, so the double-framed windows have insect mesh to allow for a breeze through the apartment for most of the year. The windows are also glazed with a coating of green leaf solar energy converting materials that deliver much more energy than the old solar panels, providing most of the electricity needed for a standard household. Our Indian friend was in a hurry, and I suspect the taxi driver too, so we took the stairs to the rooftop gingerly with our old knees. At the top we swooned at the near 360-degree view. The roof is primarily designated as a place where the residents can come for prayer, to socialize, and of course, for some to sleep outside during Sukkoth. Ah, there's something African, I said, pointing to the almost completed lapa with a thatched roof and splash pool in the one corner, which would become very popular in summer. We said our goodbyes and promised to meet our new friend from Manipur again in the future, to hear firsthand about the wonderful transformation in India, having prayed many years for an awakening there. Before getting back into Dave's taxi, we took a moment to have a last look at the apartment and the village. We held hands like young lovers in silence, taking in the beauty and savoring the precious moment, our hearts brimful with unspeakable joy and gratification. Indeed, like Ruth, we can say, Jehovah has brought me home. Thank you for listening. May this vision of the future Israel, based on so many dormant Bible prophecies, bless you. Thanks for sharing. Shalom. These are just the primary endnotes that I'm sharing. I'm just reading the titles. You can stop the video and read the 4 pages on your own time. So let's just look. On page 1, I've got the scattering and gathering of Israel, Jeremiah 31:10. And then in 1b, the gathering is greater than the scattering. In Jeremiah 16, verses 14 to 15, repeated in Jeremiah 23:7 and 8, basically says that the gathering of all Israel, which is not just Judah, shall equal the Exodus under Moses in fame and scope. And there I've got those 2 verses that you can study for yourself. Right, then in 1c, the gathering includes all believers joined under Jeshurun. Isaiah 49:6 extends the gathering to include believers from the nations. It's too small a thing for you to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring those of Israel I've kept. I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that my salvation may reach the end of the earth. This is not well understood by most people. The daughter of Jephthah, Judges 11. Jephthah, a famous judge of Gad, made the most famous of rash oaths in the Bible regarding a sacrifice. However, you can read there that in Israel the perpetual virginity of the daughter is remembered by the young girls of Israel. And then also remember that Leviticus 27, 1-7 makes provision to redeem persons consecrated by a vow. Number 3, Mahanaim and the villages of Gad. King David found refuge in Mahanaim. The names of Gad's villages are found in Genesis 46, Numbers 2, 10, 26, 32, 1 Chronicles 6, 26, 2 Samuel 2, and 17. The Igbo in Biafra also identified as a tribe of Gad. Number 4, ancient greeting approved text, Ruth 2:4. Now this is a beautiful example of how the name was used in pre-exile times. And this is confirmed in Psalm 129:8. And those who pass by have never said, the blessing of Jehovah be on you. We bless you in the name of Jehovah. It's strong proof of the general usage of the name. Right, number 4b, the name is a sign of tikkun, of restoration and not salvation. And then Adam Clarke in 1832 agreed that this salutation between Boaz and his reapers is worthy of particular regard. He said, Jehovah Imachem, Jehovah be with you. They said, Jehovah, may Jehovah bless thee. Knowledge of the sacred name did not constitute salvation for ancient Israel, but it does mark the restoration tikkun of the 12 tribes. The Manipur clan, descendants of the Manasseh tribe. This clan settled in Manipur, India as long ago as 4050 BC. Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh into exile. The Gadites, Reubenites, and Manasseh were taken into captivity in 734 to 732 BC, but it was another king who captured Samaria in 722 BC. This marked the start of the dispersion of Jacob's seed, eventually reaching the remotest of nations. 7. The year of Jubilee. After 7 Sabbath years, the 50th year is the year of Jubilee, Yovel, the year of restitution, Leviticus 25. This was to teach Israel that the land belongs to the Almighty. Number 8. Sinai renamed the Moshe Peninsula. The incorrectly named Sinai Peninsula will be renamed to honor Moses as a unique person in history. The real bride is the 12 tribes of Israel. Isaiah 49 explains Revelation 21:9. It is the New Jerusalem descending from heaven from God, having the glory of God, with 12 gates and the names written on them, which are the names of the 12 tribes. The river of life, Ezekiel 47, 1-9. There was a river flowing from under the threshold of the temple. Right, a perfect example of such a stream of water is at Banyas Tel Dan in the north of Israel. 11. A man 100 will be reckoned a sinner, Isaiah 65:20. No more shall an infant from there live but a few days, nor an old man who has fulfilled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. For they shall be the descendants of the blessed of Jehovah. 12. The Zechariah formula. In Zechariah 10:10, 13, 8-9. Until no more room is found for them, and it shall come to pass in all the land, says Jehovah, that 2/3 will be cut off and die, but 1/3 shall be left. And then my people and each of them will say, Jehovah my God. Right, these are just a few short footnotes. There are many more that the case is built on. As you can see, many of these things have not yet been completely fulfilled, and it shall happen. And this is what the story is all about. Thank you for listening. In the next video, we explored more of the land of Emmanuel. Thank you. Shalom.